How are you doing, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Commander Bear. You might know me from the previous tutorial I made about cinematics in Squad. And if you've already watched that tutorial, done some of your own artworks, and would like to get to know some more things that will help you to make good artworks and will make your life practically a lot easier in the SDK, this tutorial is for you. This one is the most updated one for the time, for I guess 2022. And I'm going to show you some things that might not be the most connected. For example, I'm going to show you how to add particle effects to your cinematic and make them show up at the exact time you want them to show up. I know it's a thing that many people wanted to know how to do since they haven't messed around with the program that much. So that's something that you guys asked. I'm also going to show you how to detach weapons in the best way possible, both in the animation preview sequence, so you can animate your character around the weapon better, and also in game, how to snap it towards that character. How to add attachments to those weapons, and I'm also going to include two little extra tutorials about composition and camera work, which is going to be, I guess, two big stars of this tutorial. There's going to be all sorts of little tips, tricks, mishmash of stuff that some of it is going to be technical, some of it is going to be pretty theoretical, and it will help you create better artworks. In my opinion, it will make your life a lot easier and will save you a bunch of time when you're either making animations, sequences, and trying to pretty much make any artwork using the Squad SDK. Please note that this is not a modding tutorial of any kind. This is just to some sort of a continuation from the previous tutorial I've made about the general feel and familiarization with the Squad SDK in order to make beautiful cinematics, as you can see on the screen right now. So without further ado, let's start. Jumping into our first tutorial, we're going to talk about particle effects. Particle effects are explosions, smoke columns, muzzle flashes, anything that emits a sort of a light and, an effect that happens in the game that you can use in the editor as well. We can use them for cinematic purposes all the time, and we do it all the time. As you can see, some pictures that I'm showing you on the screen right now. Now, if we jump into the game, I just jumped into one of my saves right now, the Fallujah cinematic save, and I made a new scene, I made a new everything. I made a new level. Make sure that you make a new level done in particle effects tutorial, for example. That's what I do. And set up your scene to your liking. Now, when you finished everything, you'll need to add your particles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Content Browser, Filters, and click on Particle System. This is going to allow me to select only particles when I'm searching for a keyword. So I'm going to select Particle System right here at the tags, and it's going to have a bottom white line. This is going to indicate that this is a particle. I'm going to search for a muzzle flash because this is what we're going to do in this tutorial. I'm going to choose muzzle flash 2A72. There's all kinds of different choices that you can make, but for this tutorial I'm going to use this muzzle flash. As you can see, when I added it into the world, currently I'm in wireframe mode. I press G and I can see all the invisible actors. I can see particles with a little, I don't know, I would call it a boom around it. You see like there's a little explosion icon around it. This is the only way I can really see the particles before I render. There's another way, but I'll show you it in a bit. So in order to place that particle in the correct place and to know that I'm in the correct place, I'm going to need to lock it into an actor. And my actor right here is the M4. So this particle, this muzzle flash, is going to come out of this M4 muzzle, and I'm going to need it to be precise. So I'm going to go into the world outliner, make sure that I'm only in current level, drag the muzzle flash and drag it towards the M4 that I have. After I do that, a little drop menu will appear, and I'm going to select muzzle. After I did that, nothing really changed, but this has turned into a child of the M4. A child means that every time I move that M4, the particle will move with it. I'm going to go ahead and select the particle, go to details, go all the way to location under transform, and I'm going to reset to default. What this is going to do is take this particle, as you can see there was a little bit of a jitter there. I'm going to take this particle and put it in the muzzle. And then, as you can see, there's a big green arrow, not the small one. It's going to show me the direction of which the particle is going to happen. So if I put it like this, changed it a little bit, it's going to start from this point of the muzzle all the way to the left. So in order to test the particle itself, I'm going to go down to the particle settings, emitter actions right here, and there's reset emitter. Every time I press on it, it's going to do that particle again and again. As you can see, there's a little bit of flashes here and there because this particle is working in normal speed. Now, if I'm going to take a recording of that particle, I'm not going to want that to be in real-time speed. It's going to catch only a frame or two of that particle. For example, I want this particle to be like lighten up the entire area, and I want to see the smoke column coming out. I want to see it in action, like I just caught a bullet coming out of that chamber. In order to do that, what we're going to do is go into the particle settings and go to custom time dilation. I'm going to set it up from 1 to 0.05. Once I did that, as you can see, resetted the emitter, and every time I'm pressing on it, it's going to do something different. It's going to do it very slowly in a way that I could capture it very nicely and very easily in my recording. Now, please note that some of the muzzle flashes or the particles are randomized, which means that if I pressed on reset right here, and you can see that little smoke column, if I press another time, it's going to show it a little bit different. This time it's going to show only light and only a bit of smoke. So it's really up to a matter of luck when it comes to those randomized effects. You're going to need to render it a few times over and over in order to catch the perfect frame. Now, in order to actually catch a perfect frame of that particle effect, what I'm going to need to do is, when I finished everything, I'm going to go into my camera, I'm going to go into camera particles, going to go into my sequencer, which I already opened, take my camera, drag it onto the sequencer. As I did that, it opened a timeline, and the timeline is 60 frames. Now, this is something I've set up beforehand. Don't get excited if it shows more, but what we're going to do, instead of just taking the timeline and making like one frame, we're going to keep it on 60 frames in order to catch the full experience of that particle effect. For example, when you have multiple particle effects and you want them to have different speeds, you will need to take 60, 120, 220 pictures in order to catch the perfect frame, which you can see the particle effect. Please make sure that you have your custom time dilation, especially on really fast effects like these, like the muzzle flashes, which you can see them for 1 or 2 frames, set down to lower than 1. If you do that, as you can see, it will take a lot more frames to shoot that, I would say, particle effect. So for now, I'm going to cut that down into 30 frames. After I cut that down to 30 frames, I'm ready to render. When I press on render, and again, I want to remind you that if you look over here on the screen, you will need to delete the gameplay folder, and you will need to set up in the world settings, you need to set up the game mode to just game mode, not BP anything, because it will crash your program if you don't do that prior to rendering. That's just a reminder from previous tutorial. All right. After I finished with that, I'm going to go down to animation. As you can see, I'm not going to use custom end frame, custom start frame. I'm not going to use any warm-ups for that. This is pretty much warming up the animations when it just starts them a second early. For now, we really don't want to use that. I barely use that at all. So for the animations, I'm going to use custom start 0, 0 and 0, 30, which is going to be our end. Okay. I can do that differently. I could start at 0, 0, 0, 5, like the fifth frame to start, but for now I'm just going to use the beginning frame. I'm going to hit render and I'm going to meet you at the folder. We're done with pretty much the render. It takes some time. I did do a first render of 30 frames. I realized it was a bit too little, so I did 60. And it took me like I think 2 times to render this entire thing. And now when I go into my render folder, I'm presented with 60 pictures of the muzzle flash. Now this muzzle flash isn't really fit for that exact weapon, so it looks a bit weird now when I'm looking at it the second time, but I want this pretty much. So if you open, for example, the first picture and then you press on your keyboard like right or left, it shows up like a little animation. As you can see on the top left, just pressing it and it just goes picture by picture, picture by picture. So you can pick up the picture that you think is best for you. I'm just going to show you an example of some of the things I've saved. For example, this is the Fallujah one. This is the one I've made that you see on the screen right now. As you can see, those are the particle effects I used. I used 2 of them. One for the missile, one for the backblast, and this is pretty much how it went. I just chose the perfect one. Now for the motion blur and everything, I'll show you that later. It's in Photoshop. I'll show you when I get to composition. But yeah, this is pretty much what I did in order to use particles. So this is what you need to know when you're messing with particles. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to add weapons to your preview to animations. I will show you that in a second. And add attachments to different weapons in a way that is going to be comfortable and easy for you to use. So let's jump right in. So I'm going to add an actor into the world. Now we have an Australian faction, so I'm going to add the Aussie recruit. I'll add that right in. All right, this is all set. Placed it in the world. Now you might remember that from the last tutorial, which I showed you how to pose your characters. So for now, I'm going to go to that character, edit him. And when I pop up the window, I'm going to show you some things that made my life a lot easier. So when I get to that window right here to the mesh, I'm going to go up to animation, just like I would do when I am basically trying to modify him. Now, as you can see, it's a different character from my Australian buddy here. It's a different weapon than whatever those guys would use, because this one will use the L85 and this one would use the AUG. So what I'm going to do in order to feel a bit more immersed, I would say, when I'm shaping the animation or the pose to my liking, because both of those models are really different in their gear and you got to place their hands or legs at the right place. Even though dimensionally they're the same, it doesn't feel, the same. So in order to do that, I'm just going to open up that window to be a bit bigger. And I'm going to, I'm going to take that down a bit. And then you can see when I'm in animation, there's mesh. I'm going to go to mesh, SK, Oz, recruit, the one that I'm using right now. And it changed the character that I'm using into recruit. So that's all dandy and that's all nice. But now I want to change the weapon as well. In order to change the weapon as well, as you can see when you chose that character, on the left side there's all the bones. When you go down to the bones, go root, bicep, pelvis, all of those, go all the way down, all the way down. Search for weapon. So here we have multiple weapon, bicep, I key, weapon, root, weapon, camera bone, bicep, weapon 1. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to bicep 01 weapon 1. This is what I'm going to do. And then what I'm going to do is going to remove all attached assets. When I did that, it just remove the preview asset for that gun. Now I'm going to right click that again and add a preview asset. When I'm going to do that, I'm going to use the AUG. Oh, I can't find it, so I'm just going to use an M4. Doesn't matter. I'm going to use the M4, click on the M4, and it edited it just like another weapon. This animation, for example, is perfect for the M4. So I'm going to use that animation in my sequence. All right, so we're going to add that in. Now, this animation is called, I forgot, let's see where I can find that. This animation is called, I think it's the default one, but yeah, it doesn't matter. It works with pretty much every animation. So HR M4 alt grip base pose. Yeah, I'm just gonna, yeah, HR M4 base pose. This is what I'm gonna use. So if I close that, go back to my character, go to use animation. So what I used here is the HR M4 alt grip base pose. Doesn't really matter what we're using for this tutorial. I'm going to take that M4 and I'm going to child it onto that character. So what I'm going to do is, in order to place it in his hands, I'm going to choose the M4. Just like I did it with the particles, I'm going to go to SKOS Recruit, attach it, and attach it to BIPE01 weapon socket. Once I do that, I can just alter the, click on the little yellow arrow to reset to default on both location and rotation. I wouldn't do that to scale because it doesn't matter. And it placed it in his hands perfectly, as you can see. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to place attachments on that gun. While that gun is still in use by that, I would say, character soldier, you can still bind and parent and child things to that weapon. So, for example, what I'm going to do now, this one, what I'm talking about here is this M4 is currently a skeletal mesh. All the weapons that you want to attach anything to it have to be skeletal mesh. For example, if I want to remove the magazine, if I want an empty M4, I can easily do that by creating a new animation. That's a little thing I want to show you. You can do that to vehicles as well. So, for example, I can extend and make the stock smaller. Give me a second. The program is a bit stucky. I can do that. I can disband it altogether. I can change the safety, the trigger, everything pretty much is usable. The bolt, as you can see, you can even see the little compartments inside. And that's what you could pretty much do with a weapon if you make an animation of its own. It's just like you do with any other character. So if I want to add, for example, an ACOG, I'm going to search for an ACOG and search for a static mesh. Now, if I'm searching for a static mesh, I'm going to add that ACOG to the world. And here's the tricky part. While I edit that ACOG, I select it, I need to choose different mobility status. There's under transform. I would really like to say to, I think it was SGM Ghost who really showed me the way how to do this through his own tutorial. I'm just adding it to mine. Is that you need to go into the mobility, static, and move it to movable. Once you do that, you can drag that and move it under M4, the M4 that I currently have in his hands. When I do that, I'm going to need to choose, one second, going to need to choose, I think the EOTech, could be the EOTech, yeah. Rotation, everything, scale as well if you want, but even though scale wouldn't matter much. And there you have it. It is placed precisely where it should be. Same goes for a foregrip, same goes with everything. Everything has a bone on this gun, and you can edit there, and when you move the character, as you can know, everything is parented to that character. If I move the gun, the attachment is parented to the gun. If I move the thing itself, it doesn't really abide by the parenting rule. So this is how you add attachments, and this is how you change the preview of the weapons and the soldiers when you're trying to animate them in the other animation window. In this part of the tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use different lighting layers on different maps and how to change colors, fog, some sort of weather control, and some position of the sun over the entire area. This is going to greatly help you find the perfect setting and perfect, I would say, weather and light layer to pretty much work around your artwork. So the first thing I'm going to show you is lighting layers. Every map uses a lighting layer as much as it is a gameplay layer. So if we'll go down to content, go to maps. I'm using Fallujah today. Go to Fallujah City. There's gameplay layers and then there's lighting layers. Now if you'll go to the right side to levels, you will see that there is LL, name of the map, Fallujah, and then the setting of it, midday. This is the lighting layer that is currently affecting the world. If I press on the eye icon, it will disappear. Give it a second to disappear. Boom, disappears. Now, if I'll click on it again, it will reappear on the eye. I don't like to delete those layers since they, I don't know, can break the game, and I had some bugs with them. So I just like to click on the eye icon when I don't use them. So I'm going to click on the eye icon and choose a different one. I would recommend you to use a lighting layer that fits best to the map that you're using. I tried to combine different lighting layer with different maps. Some results are funky. I'm going to use LL Fallujah Night, and I'm going to drag it onto the levels. Once I did that, as you can see, LL Fallujah Night is now inactive, and it's a lighting layer. This is pretty much how it works. Now, if I would like to change the weather, if I would like to change the sun position, I would have to look up at the sky and click on it. Once I do that, it's going to select, it's going to select BPA Standard Lightning Self. There's a lot of lights under it. There's a lot of things under it. I'm going to show you only the things you're really going to fiddle around. There is the Sky Sun tint, which you can change the tint of it if it's a sunny day. The wind speed, the wind strength, the sky wind direction. There's the sun position as well. For example, if I'd like to change the sun position, it's currently nighttime, so the sun doesn't really have much of an intensity. The sun roll, the sun brightness, I could change it to be all the way up, which is going to be kind of a moonlight type of thing because it's nighttime. And sunlight temperature, which is going to be set up to kelvins. Kelvins is the temperature of lightning, which I'm going to talk about in a different tutorial. So, sunlight brightness, I'm going to put it back. Sunlight temp, I'm going to put it back. Everything is nice. We also have fog, which we can change to 000 to have zero fog, or even higher to have a lot of fog. We can change the height of it, at which height it forms, or at which height it pretty much ends. The height of that fog, the start distance, and the fall off. The color of the fog is changeable too. If you have the in scattering color, you can change it to red, and it can change out to red. You can see there's a little bit of a red halo around it. If I go up, you can see it. And this is pretty much how you can change the weather. I would recommend using that and doing that. Oh yeah, that's the colors. Doing that as much as you can if it serves you well. If it serves you well. Sometimes I find myself not use that at all. It all depends on you. You have to fiddle around with it. I'm not gonna silver plate it down all the way to you. You have to get a feeling for it. It's not something that just comes around like this. So this one was about the lighting layer. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on the next one about lighting in general. Yeah, join me there. Okay, in this tutorial I'm going to talk about the different lights that we can use to our advantage when we're using the SDK. For example, we have, if we'll go down to lights on the left side on modes, I have directional light, which is a whole area of light, affects almost the entire map. I have skylight, which I barely use. It determines the light of the sky. There's already one. There's the rec light, which is going to be a light surrounding, I would say, a plate, you know, like if you would throw light at that plate and it would reflect it back. And pretty much the settings of all of them is changeable by the radius, by the width, by the height, and by the intensity of those lights. It's all here at the bottom right side when it says light. Each one of those lights have the same setting, really, according to them. This one is a plate one, so obviously the plate will get bigger when I get the radius bigger. This one is going to be a point light, so obviously when I'm going to use the attenuation radius, it's going to be bigger or smaller by the standards I put it in. So this is pretty much about lights. Please note that you'll need to press G when you use them, because if you have the wireframes disabled, you will not be able to control them and hold them really. So this is pretty much about those lights. But there's also one cool thing to show you. There's also a spotlight, which I'm going to show you now. I use it all the time for cinematic purposes. I can set up a very dramatic vibe like this. If I mess around with the lighting, if I mess around with the night layer, I can set up something very dramatic like that. Now, I can change around the cone angle. I can change around everything, like he's in a show or something like that. It's really nice. You can mess around with it, have as much fun as you want. Now, there's also a light temperature, and this where photography is kind of come into play. Now, the temperature of a light is determined by Kelvin degrees, Kelvin units. Kelvin unit starts at, I would say, 1,700 kelvins, which is the hotter temperature of light, and comes all the way down to 12,000. The between and middle is around 8,000, 6,500, something around there. And if you'd like to get, you know, a different feeling, like a warming feeling like this, like 2,300 kelvins, it's pretty nice, it's pretty good. Make sure you tick the use temperature beforehand. It's always false, so use the temperatures every time you can when you use lights like that. And I will show you a small trick about how to get natural light. What I mean by natural light is sunlight. So we're going to need to have two different lights. I'm going to take this light and duplicate it. A nice way to duplicate it is hold Alt and then drag that light to the other side. This duplicated the light. I'm going to choose one of my lights and I'm going to set the temperature to 3,500 kelvins, which is pretty hot, not gonna lie. The other one I'm going to set up to 8,000 kelvins, which is going to be pretty cold. I'm going to position themselves together above the character. This is how sunlight looks like. This is how in photography you pretty much bind both of those lights in order to get that little natural hue of light. Now obviously there's a few things that I'm going to show you in the camera tutorial later on about how to change the lens flare that you can see right here or things like that. So this is pretty much how you mess with lights. You're going to need to have a feel for yourself, as I said in the previous tutorial, because some of those things are just taught by trying and doing and trial and error. So I'm just showing you how they work, and you're free to do whatever you want with them. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to mess around with a bit more of a professional camera placement and some of the advanced things that you can do with the cinematic camera. So if you go to the left side and you choose your camera, choose Sign Camera Actor, place it down in the world, change its name to something that you could spot easily. I'm going to call it Bear Cam, something like that. So when I'll do that, I go to Perspective, Placed Camera, Bear Cam, and I'm on it. Pretty nice. I pilot it right now. I'm using it right now. It works fine. I'm going to change the type of camera if I want to. I'm going to change the zoom. I'm going to change it to 85mm just to show you how depth work. And as you can see, the camera is having the character not in depth of field and the background in depth of field, which brings me to my next point. I'm going to choose the camera up here on the top left. And once I have it locked down in place where I want it to be, I'm going to right click on it, transform, and lock actor movement. This is going to lock the camera, so whenever I try to move it, I can't. In order to stop piloting that camera, I'm going to press on stop piloting actor right here, and I can still see it in the world. I can move it around. I can't because I locked it into place. In order to unlock it, right click again, transform, and then tick this. Now, for this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do the focus settings pretty well and do some post-processing. If you don't know what's post-processing, after you take a picture, the camera itself post-processes it. So we have focus right here. Don't mess around with the focal length or too much, only if you want to. You have to fiddle around and get a feel for yourself. Focus settings, if I want to have none, then everything will be in focus. If I want to have tracking, it's going to track the biggest target, which is currently the background. And if I want to have manual, it's going to be 10th, I think 100,000 focus distance. Now, what I like to do is I like to get my focus straight on point. So over here there's a sample scene. I'm going to click on the character and it will focus the character. Now there's another way. If the character is in different distances from the camera, for example, the tip of that weapon is closer than the helmet. What I like to do is draw debug focus plane. This will show me the area of where the focus is. For example, if I move it further, as you can see, the plane itself is where the focus is. So I'm going to put it straight in the middle where this area is in focus and this one is a bit less in focus. I want to have it really evened out. This is what I want to do. I can change the focus harshness. Now I will click on that again because I got the perfect focus setting. In the aperture, for example, if I have it at 1.8, it's going to show it pretty blurry. If I'm going to chew it up, then it's going to show it less blurry, as you can see. I'm going to blur it all the way. Going to go down to post process. This is going to be where all the fun happens. We have mobile depth of field, which we can change. I'm not going to touch that right now because there isn't really anything to touch. We have bloom, which we have a method of bloom, intensity, and threshold. I can have the bloom set to 0, so the spotlight itself doesn't show me any bloom on the edges of the helmet, and I can set it all the way up. As you can see, this is what it does. You'll have to tick those in order to use them. Exposure. I wouldn't recommend messing with it too much because at the end of the day, you can always use Photoshop and mess around with the exposure. Chromatic aberration, if you want to show movement or, I don't know, do some wacky stuff, you can do it with this. Dirt mask, you can add a certain texture. I'm going to add wood and use it on top of everything. Give me a second, it's just loading. You can use the intensity of it, you can use everything. I wouldn't recommend. Lens flares, you can have the intensity of them, as you can see. This is lens flares from the light that shines through his helmet. Color grading, you have white balance, the temperature in kelvins that you can use and change. And you have another cool thing that I like to use. I will show you that in a second. I think it's going to be color grading. I already showed that. Oh yeah, shadows and highlight. You can change the saturation of the shadows, the color of them, and everything by pretty much moving those wheels around, and it changes every color of shadow, every color of highlights. It's really, really cool. I use it pretty much all the time, but you need to know what you're doing with it. There's a lot of post-processing for film as well, which you're not going to touch too much. But this is pretty much going to be it for the advanced camera settings. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching. I was Commander Bear. I was showing you today some of the tutorials I think that are a must to know if you're trying to advance forward in making artworks and cinematics um, in the Squad SDK. SDK is the uh, the tool you can use in order to make cool cinematics or mod the game. My I would say area of expertise is really the cinematic stuff. I don't mod, so if you have any questions about that, you just ask for a link for the modding community and I can send it over. Those are my works as you can see on your screen right now. If you made anything new of your own, please show it. If you have no idea what you just watched, I would recommend you to go back into the main tutorial video which I showed. This one is for the advanced people who already know how to mess around and fiddle with the program a bit more, to give you a bit more tips, tricks, and things to get you and get you to work less time and get better results, be more comfortable, and work more efficiently. So that was me. Thank you very much for watching. And if you ever done any of those artworks, screenshots, or anything, tag me in them. Tell me you've done them. I don't know. I wouldn't care about credit, but if you would give, it would be great. Um, and all of those artwork you see in front of your face are available right now in my Steam. All the links are down below. You can join the Squad Cinematic group. Just send me a message. And thank you for watching. Have a good one.